My name is Jonathan Cole. I'm 40 years old, a structural engineer, and until a year ago, I thought I had built something solid, a marriage, a life, a future. My wife Danielle was the artistic one, always painting, dreaming, planning trips we'd never take. We were different, but I thought that balance was what made us work. We'd been married for 9 years, no kids yet, just plans. Plans I thought we were building together. But somewhere along the line, she started turning those plans into something private, something that no longer included me. The change was subtle. She started traveling more for inspiration. She'd come back quieter. Her phone never left her hand. When I asked if something was wrong, she'd say I was being too suspicious, too rigid. "Not everything is a blueprint, Jonathan," she said once, laughing like I'd misunderstood life entirely. And maybe I had, because I didn't see the collapse until the dust hit my lungs. One morning she sat across from me at our kitchen table, not with anger, but with detachment. She said she loved me, but not like before, that she needed freedom, clarity, space. She asked for the divorce calmly, almost as if it were a business arrangement. I didn't argue. I didn't plead. I just listened, signed where she asked, and watched her walk out with a suitcase and no emotion in her eyes. It was like I had already disappeared to her months ago. Our friends were shocked. Some thought it was mutual. Others assumed I had done something wrong, been too dull, too logical, too distant. I didn't explain. What was the point? People see what they want. I just focused on rebuilding the life she walked away from. Quiet nights, new hobbies, work, silence. But it wasn't grief that followed me, it was confusion. Something about how quickly she moved on didn't sit right. A few months after the divorce, the news broke in our social circle. Danielle had remarried, fast, to a man she called her true soulmate. His name was Gabriel. She posted photos of them laughing on a yacht, kissing in front of the Eiffel Tower. The captions made it sound like she'd finally found peace. I stared at those pictures with a strange stillness. Something was wrong, and I couldn't name it yet. Not until I saw his face up close. A mutual friend invited me to a birthday dinner. I wasn't planning to go, but something pulled me there, and that's when it happened. I turned the corner, and there he was. Gabriel, the dream man Danielle left me for, smiling, shaking hands. And as I got closer, I froze. I knew that face. I'd seen it before, and not just online. The truth rushed in like a cold wind, and suddenly everything made perfect, painful sense. I stood there, rooted to the floor, my mind racing while my body refused to move. Gabriel's face wasn't just familiar. It was etched into my past, like a scar I'd learned to ignore. Years ago, back when Danielle and I were only 3 years into our marriage, I had caught a glimpse of him in a photo she had quickly deleted. I remember asking who he was, and she brushed it off with a casual lie. Just someone I knew from an old art show. I believed her, or more truthfully, I wanted to. But seeing him now, in person, smiling like he belonged, like he had always been part of the picture, it was like watching a memory sharpen into focus. He wasn't just from the past. He was the past. The man she swore meant nothing. The one I once sensed was more than she admitted, was now wearing the ring I bought, standing in the life I helped her build. Suddenly, every unexplained trip, every distant gaze, every girl's weekend, it all unraveled. The betrayal hadn't started after the divorce. It had been happening while I was still calling her my wife. I didn't make a scene. I walked past him, nodded politely, and took a seat on the far end of the room. He didn't recognize me, or maybe he did, and pretended not to. Either way, I watched him all evening, not out of jealousy but study. His smile was too perfect. His eyes too aware, he played the part of the doting husband flawlessly. But I knew that look. I had worn it for years. I knew what it cost. Danielle arrived an hour late, of course. She always had a flair for entrances. When her eyes met mine, she froze for just a second. Just enough for me to confirm everything I suspected. She didn't expect to see me, and more than that, she didn't want me to see him. Her jaw tightened, but she composed herself quickly, gliding over to him with a kiss like the ones she used to save for our anniversary. I watched in silence, not broken, just aware. The truth wasn't just unfolding, it was performing itself for me. The rest of the night blurred by, in music, wine, and fake laughter, but I saw everything I needed to. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need to get back at anyone. I had something better, information, and people always underestimate how powerful a calm, observant man becomes once he's no longer emotionally tethered to the person who betrayed him. I left the party without saying goodbye. But before I walked out, I looked at Gabriel one last time, and I realized something else. He wasn't her dream man. He was her escape plan. And I had just seen the cracks in their perfect story. After that night, I didn't go looking for more answers. They started coming to me, quietly. Through whispers from mutual friends, subtle shifts in tone, and questions people began asking me that Danielle never expected to face. It turns out when someone climbs fast and loud, people begin to notice the trail behind them. One of her old college friends messaged me on Facebook. Unexpectedly, "I didn't realize Danielle married that guy," she said. "Wasn't he the one who kept showing up when you two were still married?" I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Because that one sentence confirmed the timeline I had been slowly assembling in my mind. Gabriel wasn't new. He wasn't even recent. He had been orbiting her like a secret moon for years. And the worst part, I remembered now. Once, after one of Danielle's solo art retreats, I'd found a train ticket from a city Gabrielle happened to live in at the time. She said she was visiting a gallery. That lie had been so smooth, so practiced, I never thought to question it, until now. But I didn't confront her. I didn't reach out. Instead, I started documenting what I had: emails, financial transfers, pictures, subtle inconsistencies. Because while Danielle had spent years building a fantasy life, I had spent years unknowingly holding on to receipts, literal and emotional. I wasn't collecting these things for revenge. I was collecting them for myself, for clarity, for proof that I hadn't imagined the betrayal, that I hadn't been blind, just trusting. It wasn't just the cheating that hit me, it was the erasure. In her new narrative, I didn't exist. She told people we grew apart, that I didn't support her art, that I was too cold, too detached, and yet I was the one who paid for her gallery space. I was the one who drove 6 hours to see her first solo exhibit when no one else showed up. I was the one who encouraged her to quit her job and pursue painting full-time. But in her retelling, she had risen alone, just a struggling artist who finally found love. She deleted all our old photos online, even mutual ones with friends, scrubbed me from her digital life like I was a footnote in a novel she no longer wanted to acknowledge. And yet, she kept the same painting studio I renovated for her, the same logo I helped design, the same brand identity I created late at night while she slept. I was gone, but the things I built were still holding her up. I wasn't angry, not anymore. I was calm, the kind of calm that only comes when you finally stopped mourning a fantasy and started accepting reality. She thought she'd moved on to better, but she hadn't. She'd just moved on to a more flattering lie. And lies, no matter how pretty, always crack under the weight of truth. It started with small things, the kind of details most people wouldn't notice, but I knew her too well to miss. Her social media posts grew less frequent. Her smile in photos turned stiff, rehearsed. The bright, curated world she built with Gabriel began to dim around the edges. I knew that look. It was the same look she used to wear in the last months of our marriage, when the performance got heavier than the truth she was trying to hide. One night, I got a call from Melissa, one of our mutual friends who drifted more toward her after the split. She sounded hesitant. "I probably shouldn't be telling you this," she said, "but Danielle's been asking people if you've talked to anyone about her and Gabriel. She's nervous. Did something happen?" I told her no, because I hadn't said anything. I didn't need to. Danielle's guilt was doing all the talking for me. People like her start unraveling not because of confrontation, but because of anticipation. She was waiting for the other shoe to drop, and I hadn't even lifted it yet. Gabriel, from what I could gather, wasn't the solid dream she'd painted him to be. Word was spreading that he had bounced between careers, had debts she never mentioned, and more than a few flirtations with people inside their social circle. It was ironic, really. She'd traded stability for excitement, and now excitement was starting to show its true cost. But I said nothing. Not to her, not to anyone. I just watched the cracks widen on their carefully crafted mirror. A month later, I saw her again. Pure coincidence, or maybe divine timing. She was sitting alone at a local art fair, one she used to beg me to attend with her. Her canvas sat untouched. She looked tired, worn down by the life she once sprinted toward. When she finally saw me across the aisle, something flickered in her eyes. Recognition, maybe, or regret. I didn't walk over. I just nodded once, a quiet acknowledgement that I saw her, all of her. Then I turned away. I didn't need her apology. I didn't need closure. What I had now was something far more powerful. Perspective. She had built a life on top of a hollow foundation, and now it was starting to buckle. And she knew in some part of her soul that I was the only one who ever saw her clearly, not the persona, not the performance, but the truth beneath it all. And the truth was this. I had survived the worst of her. She was now living inside the world. She chose, and discovering that the dream she ran toward was made of smoke. Danielle reached out, not long after that fair. A short message, no greeting, no explanation. Just, "Can we talk?" I stared at it for a long time. There was a time I would have dropped everything to reply, but that time had passed. I didn't delete it. I didn't respond either. That message wasn't about reconnection. It was about discomfort, hers, not mine. She was feeling the edges of the life she carved out with lies. And suddenly, silence from the man she betrayed was louder than any confrontation. Her second message came days later. "It's not what you think." That was all. But the irony was heavy. I wasn't thinking anything at all anymore. She still believed she had power in the ambiguity, still believed I was orbiting her shadow, but I had already stepped into the light long ago. There's a strange relief that comes when the person who broke you realizes you're no longer watching. And I wasn't, not really. I was focused on rebuilding, not revenge. Then the whispers turned into more. A friend of a friend shared that Danielle and Gabriel were taking space, that she had moved out temporarily, that there were rumors of infidelity on his side. I didn't react. I didn't gloat. I just took a deep breath and let that information pass through me like air. She had chased a fantasy, built on deception, and now even that illusion was fracturing from the inside. I didn't need to say a word. Life was giving her all the answers she thought she'd stolen from me. I went back to the studio she abandoned, the one I helped renovate when she first pursued art full-time. It had been taken over by a new artist, young, quiet, focused. As I stood in that same space, now filled with different colors, different dreams, I felt something shift inside me. That studio wasn't hers anymore. It wasn't even mine. It was just a place, and I was finally detached from the emotion it once carried. Later that week, I bumped into Gabriel, pure chance. He was coming out of a downtown bar, slightly drunk, alone. He looked at me, paused, then smirked like he expected me to lash out, but I didn't. I just nodded and kept walking. That was the moment he understood something Danielle hadn't. I wasn't in the game anymore. They couldn't touch me. I wasn't their past. I was the consequence they never saw coming, because I hadn't needed to destroy them. I had simply let the truth do what it always does, echo. It's strange how silence, once heavy with heartbreak, can become your greatest ally. Danielle had always thrived on control of the story, of the attention, of how she was seen. But silence doesn't play by those rules. It lingers, it questions, it turns every room she enters into a place where she wonders what people know, what I might have said. And that quiet uncertainty, it speaks louder than any public retaliation ever could. A colleague of hers, someone she once introduced to me as just a client, reached out through a mutual contact. He wanted to clear the air, to say he had no idea what she was doing behind the scenes while we were married. I told him not to worry. I wasn't angry. I wasn't warning anyone. People were drawing their own conclusions now, because the version of her she worked so hard to sell was starting to look unstable. Contradictions catch up to everyone eventually. Danielle's online presence changed drastically. The photos with Gabriel vanished. Her bio shifted from wife, artist, dreamer to just artist. The carefully posed joy disappeared, replaced by quotes about growth and healing, the kind that read more like confessions than inspiration. And through it all, I never said a word. Not publicly, not to her, because this wasn't about humiliation. This was about truth doing its work without my interference. One day, while walking to a bookstore I used to visit with her, I found a note slipped into the doorframe of my apartment. No envelope, just her handwriting. It said, "I didn't know how to stop lying without losing everything. I think I lost you before I even realized it." I sat with it for a while, not out of sentiment, but out of clarity. She wasn't asking for forgiveness. She was admitting to the very thing I'd suspected all along. The betrayal wasn't a moment. It was a method, one she had perfected. I never responded. I didn't need to. That note wasn't a bridge. It was a mirror, one she finally held up to herself. She had spent so long rewriting our history that she forgot the one person who lived every truth alongside her, me. And now, without anyone to prop up the fantasy, she was standing alone in the wreckage of the life she once ran toward. What she called freedom had become isolation. The longer I stayed quiet, the clearer everything became. Not just about Danielle, but about myself. For years I thought love meant endurance, that staying loyal, even through small betrayals and shifting truths, made me strong. But I understand now, strength isn't staying with someone who chips away at you quietly. Strength is walking away before they get the chance to shatter what you still have left inside. I began to rebuild my space, not just physically, but emotionally. I changed my routines, moved apartments, donated the last box of her things, the one I had been keeping out of habit, not hope. Every action was a small reclaiming of myself. And for the first time in years, I wasn't living in reaction to her. I wasn't bracing for another disappointment or waiting for an apology. I was simply living unburdened, honest and light. That's when something unexpected happened. A small art non-profit I had once helped Danielle connect with reached out to me. Not because of her, but because they were familiar with the branding work I'd done quietly behind the scenes. They wanted help redesigning their program materials, and when I told them yes, something in me shifted. I realized I hadn't lost my generosity. I just stopped giving it to people who couldn't hold it. The more I leaned into this new chapter, the more people began to reappear. Old friends, distant colleagues, even strangers who admired the quiet way I handled everything. One woman, Claire, reached out after a local event. She told me she'd seen me once, years ago, sitting with Danielle at a gallery, looking calm and proud. She said she always remembered that expression, the kind of stillness people carry when they know who they are. I hadn't felt that way in a long time. Until now. Danielle? She faded. Not in scandal, not in flames, but in slow retreat. I heard she moved again. Switched jobs, rebranded again. That's what people like her do. They paint over the cracks instead of rebuilding the foundation. But no matter how many times she reinvents herself, she'll always carry the truth beneath the gloss. And I'll always be the one who walked away, not bitter, not broken, just done. Because my life didn't end when she left. It finally began. There's a certain kind of peace that comes when you stop needing others to see what was done to you. For a long time, I wanted people to understand, not to pity me, but to know the truth. Now, I don't need that. My peace doesn't require an audience. It's in the way I wake up without dread. It's in the absence of walking on eggshells. It's in how I trust myself again, my instincts, my voice, my silence. Danielle's name barely comes up anymore. Not because people forgot, but because they finally stopped pretending. The ones who once fawned over her curated life began to see the inconsistencies for themselves. A few even reached out to apologize for not believing me. I told them there was nothing to apologize for. The truth always outlasts the performance. It just takes time and stillness for it to echo. Gabrielle, too, disappeared from her narrative. No grand breakup announcement, no public drama, just deletion. Quiet erasure, the same way she tried to erase me. But the difference is I didn't vanish. I grew. She removed pictures. I rebuilt purpose. She buried stories. I planted new ones. We both moved on, but only one of us evolved. I recently gave a guest lecture on resilience at a community workshop, not because I consider myself a guru on healing, but because someone asked me what got me through betrayal without bitterness. My answer was simple. I stopped trying to change what happened and started changing what it meant. That's all healing really is, rewriting the meaning of what broke you until it no longer controls your future. As I stood before that room of strangers, I realized something. The version of me Danielle left behind didn't die. He just stepped aside. So the real version, the one who didn't need validation or performance, could lead. And that man, he's quieter, wiser, and absolutely untouchable. Danielle once believed she'd walked away with the best part of our life. But what she left behind became the best part of mine. It's been over a year since I last saw her. No more texts, no more notes, no more chance encounters, just distance, clean, unspoken, and necessary. In many ways, she taught me more in her leaving than she ever did while she was mine, not because she offered wisdom, but because her choices forced me to find mine. Her betrayal showed me what I will never accept again. Her silence taught me the power of my own, and her lies revealed how deeply I value the truth. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not even cautious. I'm just focused on the life I get to live now. A life that doesn't revolve around keeping someone happy who's already looking for an exit. A life built on clarity, consistency, and calm. I travel more. I laugh more. I love more freely, not recklessly, but without the weight of someone else's expectations suffocating my own. This time, I'm not sharing the foundation until I know who's worthy of the structure. Sometimes people ask if I still think about her. I do, not with bitterness, but with gratitude. She freed me the moment she chose someone else. She thought she was upgrading, chasing some better version of the future, but she didn't realize the life she was trying to create required loyalty, patience, and honesty, the very things she abandoned. And those things, they don't come back when you finally want them. They live with the person you betrayed. I've met someone new, slowly, carefully. We're not rushing anything. She doesn't ask about my past unless I want to share it. She listens, and she shows up. Not with grand gestures, but with consistency, the kind I once gave away without ever getting back. And every time I look at her, I remember that love doesn't have to hurt to be real. Danielle may never understand what she lost, but I understand what I gained. And in that quiet, steady knowing, there is no revenge, no regret, no residue, just peace. And that is everything.